Andre Winston was 38 years old, and until that Tuesday evening, he believed his marriage was simply going through a rough patch. He was a logistics operations director who had built everything he owned from nothing: his career, his home, his life, brick by brick, on discipline and patience. His wife Brianna was a polished event coordinator who moved through the world like someone always expecting a better room to walk into. He had never begrudged her that. He loved her completely. Then she came home from a doctor's appointment glowing in a way he hadn't seen in years, sat across from him at the dinner table, and told him she was 11 weeks pregnant. Andre smiled. He said the words a devoted husband is supposed to say. But underneath that smile, one calculation was already running. They had not been intimate in over 4 months. Brianna had no idea her husband had already found the receipt, traced the number, and confirmed the name. She had already told her lover that Andre was too stable to blow everything up. She was already wrong. And what Andre did next, quietly, methodically, without a single emotional outburst, she never saw coming. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The coffee was black. No sugar, no cream. Andre Winston had never seen the point in softening things that were fine the way they were. He sat at the kitchen table at 4:47 in the morning, the way he had every weekday for the last 11 years. A stack of logistics manifests fanned out to his left. His laptop was open, its blue light sharp against the dark kitchen. A yellow legal pad sat to his right, already half filled with his handwriting, tight, even columns of numbers, notes, corrections. The house was quiet. It was always quiet at this hour, and that was the one thing he still loved about mornings. He reached for his mug without looking away from the page he was reading. His hand found the handle exactly where he'd left it. That was Andre, a man who always knew where things were. The kitchen was spotless. It was always spotless because Andre cleaned it. He wiped the counters after every meal. He ran the dishwasher every night before bed and emptied it every morning before he sat down to work. The trash went out on Tuesdays and Fridays without a reminder. The tile grout was clean because he'd resealed it himself last spring with a kit he'd ordered and researched for 2 weeks before buying. He had built this house into a home the same way he had built everything else in his life. Carefully, without ceremony, without anyone watching. He grew up in Compton, in a 2-bedroom house that his mother kept just as clean with a lot less to work with. She worked the early shift at a medical supply warehouse for 22 years. She packed his lunch every morning, made sure his clothes were pressed, and told him exactly 2 things with any regularity. The world will assume things about you. Don't give it evidence. And don't react. Respond. He had carried those 2 sentences from that small house in Compton to a logistics degree earned on a Pell Grant. Through 6 years of working his way up at a regional freight company, into a director's role that now paid him $140,000 a year and would likely pay him more before the year was out. He had carried them into this house, too. A 4-bedroom in Baldwin Hills that he purchased outright 3 years before he ever married Brianna. His name on the deed, his money on the title, his work in every corner of it. He took a sip of coffee, set the mug down, made a note in the margin of the manifest. On the refrigerator in Brianna's handwriting was a grocery list. Oat milk, sparkling water, the fancy crackers she liked from the organic market on Crenshaw. Andre was the one who would buy them. He was the one who always bought them, even though the list was always in her handwriting. That was not a complaint. It was just a detail. Andre collected details the way other men collected grievances, quietly, without drama, storing them somewhere organized and waiting. There had been a lot of details to collect this past year. Her phone, face down on every surface, always face down, the way people leave phones when they've trained themselves to hide the habit. The screen lighting up in the night, and Brianna rolling over away from him to check it, thinking he was asleep. He was never asleep. The Tuesday 3 months ago, when she said she was at a client dinner until 10. He'd said nothing. Only noticed the mileage on the shared Camry when she'd borrowed it because her car was in for service. The client dinner venue was 8 miles from their house. She had driven 43. The receipt he found in her coat pocket 6 weeks ago, a coat he was hanging up for her, because the hall closet handle stuck and she never remembered to lift and pull at the same time. The receipt was from a restaurant called Sable. Saturday, 8:14 p.m. Dinner for 2. Brianna had mentioned Sable once, 4 months earlier, when a colleague brought it up at a party. "I've never been," she'd said. "I keep meaning to go." He had pressed the receipt flat between his fingers, looked at it for 3 full seconds, and slipped it into the breast pocket of his own jacket. He had not said a word. The wedding photo used to hang in the living room, centered above the console table, lit by the lamp Brianna had picked out from a boutique in Silver Lake. It was a good photo. They were both laughing at something that had happened just before the shutter clicked. Something small and real. The way the best moments always were. Last month, he came home to find it moved to the hallway. No explanation, no rearrangement that would explain it. Just the photo, now sitting in a dim corner between the linen closet and the bathroom door, where no one would look at it unless they already knew it was there. Andre had straightened it, slightly off-kilter from wherever she'd hung it in a hurry. He straightened it and walked back to the kitchen and started dinner. Now he sat in the blue light of the early morning, his pen moving in steady lines across the legal pad, and he heard the stairs. Her footsteps were light. She always came down the stairs the same way, right hand trailing the banister, weight on the balls of her feet. But this morning, there was something else, a lift to her step, an energy she was carrying that he hadn't felt from her side of the house in a long time. Brianna appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair wrapped, wearing the cream-colored robe he'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She looked. There was no other word for it. Bright. A specific kind of bright. The kind that comes from the inside of a person, from something they are carrying and have not yet decided how to say. She smiled when she saw him. It was a real smile. Andre looked up from his work. He held his coffee mug in both hands, and he looked at his wife, and he noticed everything. The brightness, the lightness, the particular way she was standing in the doorway, like a woman arriving somewhere she'd been looking forward to. He noticed all of it. He smiled back. The street was still when Andre pulled into the driveway and put the car in park. He didn't get out. He sat with the engine ticking down and his phone in his hand, the screen bright against the gray afternoon light coming through the windshield. The reverse search result was right there, plain as anything. He'd run it twice just to be sure. Once on a site Patrice had shown him years ago. Once through a second one he found himself. The number saved in Brianna's phone under Toya W. did not belong to a woman named Toya anything. It belonged to a business registration. A name, a face, once he searched it. Cortez Alston, 40 years old. Regional real estate developer. A LinkedIn profile with a professional headshot. Sharp jaw, tailored blazer, the particular smile of a man who had been told he was impressive enough times to believe it completely. A company called Alston Development Group. A few local news mentions. A ribbon cutting at a mixed-use project in Inglewood, 18 months ago. Andre stared at the name. Cortez Alston. He had heard it exactly once. A dinner party at the Mercer's house in Ladera Heights, maybe 8 months back. Someone had mentioned a new development going up near the 405. Brianna had said his name in the middle of a group conversation, light and incidental, like she was reading it off a sign she'd happened to pass. Isn't that one of Cortez Alston's projects? Then she turned to talk to someone else. Just like that. easy, unremarkable. Andre had not thought about it again until right now. He locked his phone and sat in the quiet car for another minute. He was not panicking. He never panicked. Panic was a leak in the system, and leaks got people hurt. What he was doing was something quieter and more precise than panic. He was making sure he understood what he was looking at before he decided what to do with it. He got out of the car. He went inside. He put his keys on the hook by the door and walked to the kitchen and called his sister. Patrice picked up on the second ring. "You at the house?" she said. "Yeah." "Is she there?" "Not yet." He kept his voice level. "I need you to help me understand something." A short pause. He heard her chair roll back from her desk. Patrice had been a paralegal for 14 years, and she understood what those particular words meant in the particular way he had just said them. She didn't ask him to explain further. "Send me what you have," she said. 48 hours passed. Andre went to work. He reviewed manifest. He ran 2 team calls and approved a routing change for the Phoenix corridor, and ate lunch at his desk and came home both evenings at the same time he always did. He washed the dishes. He asked Brianna about her week. He listened to her answers. She mentioned a client event she was planning in Pasadena. She mentioned wanting to repaint the guest bedroom. She laughed at something she saw on her phone and turned the screen toward him. A video of a dog doing something clumsy. And he laughed too. And it was not a performance, exactly. It was the strange doubled life of a man who had not yet confirmed what he already knew. On the second evening, Patrice called him while he was in the garage. "The number is Cortez Alston," she said. "Registered to a secondary LLC he uses. I've got 3 properties on him, a business address in Culver City, and 2 more numbers associated with the same registration." A pause. "Andre, I hear you." This has been in her phone for a while. The contact was created 10 months ago. He said nothing for a moment. Then, "Okay. You all right?" "I will be." "Andre, I'll call you tomorrow, Patrice." He stood in the garage for a while after he hung up. The shelving unit along the far wall held his tools in labeled bins. His mother's system, the one she used in the garage of the Compton house, passed down and never changed. Everything in its place. Everything where it was supposed to be. Then he went inside and started dinner. Brianna came home while the rice was finishing. She had been at a doctor's appointment. A routine check, she had said. That morning. Nothing specific. Just overdue. She'd kissed him on the cheek on her way out the door, which she hadn't done in months, and there was that brightness again. The same one he'd noticed on the stairs 2 weeks ago, concentrated now into something that looked very close to certainty. They ate at the dining table. She'd said it herself. Actual placemats, the candle lit, the good water glasses out. She had made an effort, and he noticed the effort, and he said nothing about it. He was halfway through his plate when she put her fork down and looked at him. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was warm, happy even. Whatever she had been carrying, she had decided she was ready to put it on the table. "I'm pregnant," she said. 11 weeks, she was smiling. Both hands flat on the table, like she needed something solid underneath her to say it. Her eyes were full and bright. This was not performance. She meant this joy. She felt it completely, and it was real. Andre looked at his wife across the dinner table. His mind moved fast and quiet, the way it always did when it encountered a discrepancy. 11 weeks, roughly 2.5 months, which placed the conception at the end of January. He and Brianna had not been intimate since early October. He was sure of that date the way he was sure of anything important. Without effort, without doubt, because it was a fact that lived in the same organized place he kept all the others. He looked at her. He held all of it. The number, the name, the search result, the 43 miles, the receipt from Sable. The photo moved to the hallway. And now this. And he held it without showing a single edge of it. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. He smiled. "That's incredible news," he said. The house was quiet. Brianna had gone to bed around 10, happy and unhurried, trailing the same particular warmth she'd worn all through dinner. He'd heard her tell her mother on the phone that she was tired, but good. Glowing, her mother had said. He'd heard that, too. Andre had waited until the light under the bedroom door went dark. Then he sat down at his desk. He opened his laptop. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for yet. That was fine. He had started from less before. Over the next 4 days, he and Patrice built the picture piece by piece. She worked from her end. Property records, business filings, registration documents, the careful paper trail that exists around every person who moves money and makes deals. He worked from his dates, receipts, the small inconsistencies he had quietly catalogued over the past several weeks without knowing what they added up to. By the 4th day, they knew. The affair had been going on for 14 months. Not a moment of weakness. Not a lapse. 14 months of chosen, sustained, deliberate deception. Running almost perfectly parallel to the year Andre had spent quietly wondering what had shifted in his marriage and deciding each time to give it more time. He sat with that number for a while. 14 months. He let it mean what it meant, and then he moved forward. The professional dimension came from Patrice on the 3rd day. She had pulled Cortez Alston's recent development activity as a matter of routine, and something had snagged her attention. She called Andre on his lunch break. "You know the warehouse district your company operates out of? Off the 91 corridor?" "Yeah." "Alston filed a zoning variance application 6 months ago for a parcel right adjacent to it. Commercial mixed use." She paused. "Andre, the application has operational data in it. Traffic volume, loading frequencies, shift timing estimates. That's not the kind of information you pull from public records." He was quiet. "That's internal," he said. "That's what it looks like to me." He thought about every company dinner Brianna had attended on his arm, the casual conversations with his VP, the way she listened, sociable and bright, while men talked about their work. He had never once considered that as a vulnerability. He had trusted her inside the walls of his professional life, the same way he had trusted her inside his home. "She may not have understood what she was giving him," Patrice said, carefully. "Maybe not," Andre said. He ended the call. He went back to work. He finished the day. He came home. He asked Brianna how she was feeling, and she said tired but happy, and he made her tea and brought it to her on the couch. He was very good at this, he realized. The performance. He had been doing a version of it for a year without knowing that was what it was. The text exchange came from a number Patrice flagged on the 5th day. A second number linked to Cortez Alston's alternate LLC, the kind of number a man uses when he wants a conversation to stay separate from everything else. Patrice had obtained a screenshot through a contact she trusted and did not explain further. Andre did not ask her to. He read it on his phone, standing in the garage. Brianna's number. Cortez's number. A conversation from 3 months ago. Most of it he moved through quickly. Then he reached a message from Brianna's number, and he stopped. "Andre will never know. He trusts me completely. And even if he finds out later, he's too stable to blow everything up. He'll stay." He read it twice. Not because it was hard to understand, because he wanted to make sure he understood it exactly. She had not simply betrayed him. She had modeled him. She had studied the man she was married to with enough precision to predict his behavior, and she had concluded, clearly, confidently, in writing, that he was the kind of man who would absorb this. She had used his own steadiness against him. She had taken the thing his mother built into him, the discipline, the patience, the refusal to react without thinking, and she had calculated it as a liability. She was wrong, but she didn't know that yet. He called Naomi Osei the following morning. She picked up on the 3rd ring, and he told her to set aside an hour. She asked if he could come to her office on Thursday. He said yes. He sat across from her 2 days later and told her everything in the order it happened. No emotion in his voice that wasn't necessary. No gaps. Naomi listened without interrupting. She had a yellow legal pad open on the desk, but she barely wrote on it. She was the kind of attorney who processed out loud only when she was ready to. When he finished, she asked 2 questions. Then she set her pen down. "What outcome do you want?" she said. He told her. She looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded. Once, the way a person nods when something confirms what they already suspected. "Then don't do anything," she said. "Not yet. Let me build it first." He drove home in the dark. He went inside, checked the door, turned off the kitchen light, and sat down at his desk without turning on the lamp. The room was quiet around him. His laptop was closed. His hands were flat on the desk. He began going through everything he owned and everything he had built, piece by piece in his mind. Naomi's office was on the 14th floor of a building in Riverside that smelled like carpet cleaner and recycled air. The waiting room had 2 chairs and a small table with a plant that looked like it hadn't needed watering in years. Everything about the space said function over impression, which was exactly why Andre trusted it. He arrived 7 minutes early. He sat down. He set the folder on his knee and waited. Naomi opened the door herself and waved him in without ceremony. Her office was clean and ordered in the way that communicated she knew where everything was without needing to prove it. 1 window, a desk with a monitor and 2 stacks of files, a bookshelf along the wall that held law texts, and 3 framed photos she never discussed with clients. She gestured to the chair across from her desk and sat down. "Walk me through the property first," she said. He opened the folder and slid the deed across the desk. She looked at it without picking it up, reading the details with a kind of practiced calm that made the whole thing feel routine. Which, he understood, was the point. "Purchased 3 years before the marriage," she said. "Titled solely in your name. No refinancing after the wedding date. No amendment to add a second owner." She looked up. "This is separate property under California law. It is not a marital asset. She has no claim to it." He had known that. But hearing Naomi say it aloud, plainly, without softening it, settled something in his chest that had been slightly unsettled since the night Brianna mentioned the refinancing. "The retirement accounts," he said. Naomi turned to the second page of the documents he had brought. She asked about the vesting dates. He told her. She cross-referenced something on her monitor and nodded. Premarital contributions are protected. Anything accrued during the marriage is potentially subject to division, but the pre-marriage balance and its growth are yours. She looked at him directly. "You've been careful, Andre. That matters. I try to be." "Now," she folded her hands on the desk, "the discretionary savings. What you have sitting in joint accounts, I want that restructured. There's a legal path to doing it cleanly, documented. Nothing that looks like dissipation of assets. I'll give you the specifics before you leave today, but I want it started this week." He wrote down what she told him. He did not ask unnecessary questions. Then she pulled a fresh legal pad toward her and uncapped a pen. "The paternity question," she said. Her voice didn't change in tone. It was the same measured register she used for property law. In California, a husband is presumed to be the legal father of any child born during the marriage. That presumption is automatic, but it can be rebutted. She paused, with a timely challenge, supported by evidence. The biological father then assumes full legal and financial responsibility for the child. What does timely mean? It means we file before the birth, or close after. We don't wait. She wrote something on the pad. "I'm going to start building that file now. I'll need the timeline you documented. Last date of marital intimacy, any medical records you have access to, the communications evidence Patrice compiled." She looked up. "This is not a complicated case once the documentation is organized. The complication is that it requires you to hold your position for a few more weeks without changing your behavior. I can do that, he said. She studied him for a moment in the way that wasn't skepticism. It was the particular look of someone who already believed him and was confirming it. I know you can, she said. He stopped at his company's main office on the way back. He found the compliance officer, a quiet man named Garrett, eating lunch at his desk. Andre knocked on the open door and kept his posture easy and unhurried, just a man stopping by. Hey, Andre said. I want to initiate a routine security review. I have some reason to think that operational data from our warehouse district, shift logistics, traffic volume, loading schedules may have been accessed externally. Probably nothing. But I want it in the system. Garrett put down his fork. You want to log it formally? Yeah. Routine inquiry. No urgency. Just want the paper trail started in case anything surfaces later. Garrett nodded and pulled up the intake form on his screen. Andre gave him the specifics, framed carefully, framed correctly, framed as procedure. By the time he walked back out to the parking lot, the report existed. It had a timestamp. It had his name on it as the reporting employee. Somewhere across the city, Cortez Alston was going about his day without knowing that a thread had just been attached to him. Patrice came over that evening with food in plastic containers and the specific energy of a woman who was not going to make him ask for company. They sat at the kitchen table. She portioned out the food, and they ate for a while without talking, which was its own kind of conversation. Then Andre set down his fork. The worst part, he said. He didn't look up right away. It's not what she did. It's that she knew me. She knew exactly who I was. He paused, and she looked at everything I am and decided it made me safe to lie to. Patrice was quiet. She let the words settle before she responded. She looked at everything you are, she said, and calculated that it worked in her favor. She met his eyes. That's not just a betrayal, Andre. That's a bet. He looked at his sister across the table. Then make sure the bet costs her everything. Andre stood at the bathroom mirror at 6:47 in the morning and practiced being a husband, not the one he actually was, the other one, the one who didn't know, the one who had sat across a dinner table 11 days ago and heard the words 11 weeks pregnant and felt his chest turn to stone while his face stayed warm and open. He watched his reflection. He adjusted the set of his jaw. He let his eyes soften. There it was. That was the face. He turned off the bathroom light and went downstairs. The OB's office was in a medical complex off the 215, the kind of building with a fish tank in the waiting room and soft music piped through speakers in the ceiling. Brianna held a clipboard with intake paperwork on her lap. Her knee bounced with a small, happy energy he recognized from early in their marriage. Before the phone started staying face down, before the evenings started going unaccounted for, he sat beside her. He held her hand when she reached for his. Her fingers were warm. She leaned her shoulder against his and looked down at the paperwork and smiled to herself. Not at him, just at something inside her own mind. Something good that lived there now. He kept his thumb moving slowly across her knuckles. He thought about logistics manifests, about route optimization, about the compliance report sitting in Garrett's system with a timestamp on it. He kept his breathing even. He kept his face calm. A nurse called Brianna's name, and they walked back together. He stood in the room while the technician moved the ultrasound wand, and the monitor filled with static and then shape. A small pulse appeared on the screen, rapid and certain, a heartbeat that had nothing to do with choices or debts or any of the things the adults in the room were carrying. It was just a heartbeat. It didn't know anything yet. Brianna made a soft sound and pressed 2 fingers to her mouth. Andre looked at the screen. He kept his face composed in the particular way a man keeps his face composed when he is looking at a thing that is both real and not his. when the thing is innocent and the situation is not. He said, "Look at that." His voice was steady. Warm. He had worked on that too. Brianna turned and looked at him with wet eyes and a smile that was completely genuine. And for just 1/2 of 1 second, something moved through him that was not strategy. It was the residue of 8 years. It was grief wearing the face of a moment that should have been different. Then it passed, and he was back. The family dinner was 3 weeks later. Brianna's mother had arranged it. A Sunday meal at Dwight and Sandra's house in Fontana. The kind of house that smelled like good cooking from the driveway. There were relatives he recognized, and a few he didn't. There was a banner in the dining room. There were balloons. Andre moved through it the way he moved through every room he'd ever had to manage, reading it, holding his position, making himself exactly legible enough, and nothing more. He shook hands. He accepted congratulations. He laughed when laughter was expected, and nodded when nodding was sufficient. Brianna was radiant at the center of all of it. She moved from person to person with the ease of a woman who had finally arrived somewhere she'd been trying to get to. Animated, warm, certain of herself in a way that made the people around her light up in response. She was good at this. She had always been good at this. Andre watched her from across the room and felt nothing that would have been visible to anyone watching him. That was the point. Dwight Holloway was watching. Andre noticed it the way he noticed everything, peripherally, without acknowledgement. Dwight was 64 years old and built like a man who had worked with his body for decades and never entirely stopped. He had a quiet face and slow eyes that missed nothing. He was the kind of man who asked one question instead of 10 and waited as long as necessary for the answer. He caught Andre in the kitchen. The noise from the dining room carried through the wall. Laughter, someone's little cousins running across the floor, the familiar chaos of a family gathering. In the kitchen, it was just the two of them, and the low hum of the refrigerator. Dwight stood with his hands in his pockets and looked at Andre with the particular directness of a man who had never needed to dress something up to say it. "Son." A pause. "You all right?" Andre met his eyes. He held them for a moment, not defensively, not with performance, just honestly, in the only way the question deserved. "I will be," he said quietly. Something passed across Dwight's face. Not pity, not alarm. Recognition, maybe. The specific recognition of a man who had heard that particular kind of answer before and understood exactly what it carried. He gave a single slow nod. He didn't ask again. But when he walked back out into the dining room, his eyes moved differently. And they stayed that way for the rest of the evening. On the drive home, Brianna talked about nursery colors. She favored a warm sage green, she said. Or maybe a soft yellow. Something neutral. Something that could grow with the baby. She had saved a folder of photos on her phone. She would show him later. Andre kept both hands on the wheel and watched the freeway lights pass overhead in long, even intervals. "Sure," he said. "Whatever you think looks right." Andre's phone buzzed against the break room table at 12:17 on a Tuesday. He was eating alone, a habit he'd kept for years, not out of antisocialness, but because lunch was the 1 hour of the workday he could think without someone else's noise in the room. A plastic container of leftovers, a bottle of water, the low hum of the vending machine in the corner. He looked at the screen. Naomi. Marked urgent. He put down his fork. He took the call in the stairwell with the door pulled shut behind him. "Talk to me," he said. Naomi's voice was measured. It was always measured. Even now, even carrying what she was carrying. "I've been going through the Alston zoning application," she said. The variance request he filed for the parcel on Meridian. "Andre, there's a traffic and operations analysis attached to it. 12 pages. Detailed load distribution. Off-peak delivery windows. Average daily vehicle counts by time block." He said nothing. He already felt where this was going. That level of specificity, Naomi continued, doesn't come from public record. It doesn't come from a site survey. It comes from inside the operation. A pause. Your operation. He leaned his back against the cinder block wall. The stairwell was cool and gray and completely still. How specific? He asked. Specific enough that I recognized 3 of the metrics from the quarterly efficiency report your VP presented at the industry dinner in March of last year. Her voice stayed even. The one Brianna attended with you? He closed his eyes. Not from shock. He was past shock. He closed them because the picture had just become complete. Every edge sharp, every line connected. And sometimes a complete picture required 1 second of darkness before you could look at it properly. 14 months, the conversations she'd had beside him, the dinners, the small talk, the way she'd smiled at his colleagues and asked interested questions and remembered details because she was good at that. She had always been good at that. She had been collecting, and she had handed it to another man, and he had built something with it. Andre opened his eyes. I'm going to call legal today, he said. Garrett's been holding the compliance flag since last month. I'll give him the specific documents. I've already prepared a summary you can forward, Naomi said. I'll send it to your secure email in the next 10 minutes. Good. Andre? A brief pause. This changes the character of what she did. You understand that? I understand it, he said. He did. He had understood it the moment Naomi said your operation. This wasn't only a broken marriage. It wasn't only a lie carried for 14 months in the dark. It was his work, the thing he had built with precision and discipline and early mornings and late nights, turned into a tool for another man's benefit. She had reached into the one place that was entirely his and used it without a second thought. He said goodbye to Naomi. He stood in the stairwell for 30 more seconds. Then he went back to the break room, sat down, and called Garrett. The call with the company's legal department lasted 40 minutes. Andre was direct, organized, and completely without emotion. He walked Garrett through the timeline, forwarded Naomi's summary, and answered every question put to him. Garrett told him the compliance flag would now be escalated to a formal inquiry, and that the ethics board referral could follow within 2 weeks, depending on the review. Andre thanked him and went back to work. He did not think about it again for the rest of the afternoon. That was the discipline. You made the move, and then you kept moving. You did not stand over the board and admire it. There was still too much left to do. Brianna brought it up on a Thursday evening. Andre was at the kitchen table with his laptop open when she came in from the living room and sat across from him with the particular posture of someone who had rehearsed a conversation and was now settling in to deliver it. Back straight, hands folded on the table. A soft expression she wore when she wanted something and had already decided how to ask. I've been thinking, she said, about the house. He looked up from his screen. She talked for several minutes. Her voice was warm and practical at the same time. She was good at that combination. Now that the baby was coming, she said, it made sense to think about the future, about security, about what it would mean for their family to have the house properly in both their names. She had looked into refinancing options. The rates weren't bad right now, and adding her to the deed would be straightforward, she thought. Just paperwork. Just making things official the way they probably should have been a long time ago. She finished. She looked at him with open, reasonable eyes. Andre sat back slightly. He let a beat pass. I'll have my attorney look at the paperwork, he said. The words were quiet, unhurried, completely ordinary in tone. But something happened in Brianna's face. A small thing. Almost nothing. A flicker at the edge of her expression. Like a light going unsteady for just a half-second before holding again. Her eyes adjusted in some way she didn't control. She recovered quickly. She nodded and said that sounded fine, and pushed back from the table and moved toward the kitchen. She was refilling her glass at the sink when she heard Andre's footsteps on the stairs. She stood there with the water running. His attorney. She turned the phrase over without meaning to, the same way you press your tongue against a sore tooth. Not hard enough to hurt, but too deliberate to be accidental. Andre had never mentioned an attorney. Not in 8 years of marriage. Not once. He handled things himself. Or he called Patrice. Or he just handled it. That was who he was. She set the glass down on the counter. Upstairs, a door closed softly. Brianna looked at the dark window above the sink, at her own pale reflection in the glass. There was something in her chest that was very small and didn't have a name yet. She wasn't sure she wanted to name it. She picked up her glass. She told herself it was nothing. She almost believed it. Naomi called at 6:43 on a Friday evening. Andre was on the back porch with a glass of water, watching the last of the daylight thin out over the yard. The grass needed cutting. He had let it go on purpose, one less thing to care about maintaining. He would have someone come after. "It's done," Naomi said. "Everything is finalized and ready to file at your instruction. I need you to say the word, and it moves." He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Walk me through it." She did. Her voice was the same as it always was, clean and precise, no wasted syllables. The divorce petition was complete and in order. The separate property documentation on the house was airtight. Deed, purchase date, title history, all of it organized and ready to withstand any challenge. His pre-marriage retirement accounts were similarly documented and protected. The paternity challenge filing was prepared and would be submitted simultaneously with the divorce petition, citing conception timeline and requesting court-ordered biological testing. California law was clear on the rebuttal process, and Naomi had built the file accordingly. "And Cortez?" Andre asked. "The compliance review concluded 2 days ago," Naomi said. "The formal inquiry has been referred to the City Ethics Board. Cortez's zoning variance application is flagged as part of an active investigation into the sourcing of proprietary operational data. His financing consortium has a standard ethics clause. The moment this becomes public record, which it will, they have grounds to pause the deal." She paused. "He will not know where it started. There is nothing that points back to you beyond a routine internal security flag your company filed months ago." Andre said nothing for a moment. "You built it clean," he said. "That's the only way I know how to build it," she said. "Say the word, Andre." He looked out at the yard, the grass, the dark line of the fence at the back of the property, the house he had bought with his own money before he ever put a ring on anyone's finger. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "after I talk to her." "I'll be standing by," Naomi said. "Call me when it's done." Patrice came over an hour later with a container of soup she'd made herself and a bottle of sparkling water because she knew he wasn't drinking right now. She didn't announce any of this. She just came in, set things on the counter, and moved around his kitchen the way she always had, like it was partially hers, which in some way it always had been. They ate on the couch. The television was off. Neither of them reached for it. For a while they just sat there, and that was enough. Patrice was the one who finally spoke. "How do you feel?" Andre thought about it. He gave the question real consideration instead of answering by reflex. "Not how you'd think," he said. "I thought I'd feel, I don't know. Ready? Something sharp." He turned the water bottle in his hands. "I just feel done. Like I've been carrying something for a long time, and tomorrow I set it down." Patrice looked at him. She didn't rush past what he said. "That's what done feels like," she said. "People confuse it with empty. It's not the same thing." "She knew me," Andre said. It came out quieter than he meant it to. "That's the part I keep coming back to. She didn't just lie to me. She knew me well enough to calculate that I wouldn't move. She looked at everything I am and decided it made me safe to use." He was quiet for a second. That's a particular kind of thing to do to somebody. Patrice set her bowl down on the coffee table. She turned toward him. It is, she said simply. She didn't dress it up or soften it. And tomorrow she finds out she was wrong about who she married. Andre nodded slowly. They sat together until almost 9. When Patrice left, she squeezed his arm at the door and didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. He called Dwight Holloway at 9:15. The older man picked up on the second ring, the way he always did, like he kept the phone close and answered it as a matter of basic respect. "Andre," Dwight said. "Yes, sir." Andre sat down on the edge of the bed. "There's something you need to know before tomorrow. I wanted you to hear it from me personally, not from anyone else." A brief silence. Then, "Go ahead, son." The call lasted 30 minutes. Andre told him everything. He was organized about it, the same way he was organized about everything, but he was also honest in a way that had nothing to do with strategy. He told Dwight about the affair, the timeline, the pregnancy, the text Brianna sent Cortez about him being too stable to act. He told him about the house, the deed, the filing that was ready to move in the morning. He told him about the zoning application and what was inside it. Dwight said very little. He asked 2 questions, both of them quiet and direct, and Andre answered both of them honestly. When it was over, Dwight said, "Thank you for calling me yourself." "You deserved that," Andre said. After they hung up, Andre sat with the phone in his hand for a moment. Then he set it on the nightstand. He laid out his clothes for the morning: pressed shirt, dark slacks, shoes that were already clean. He moved through the routine without hurry. Then he got into bed and closed his eyes and slept. The coffee was already made when Brianna came downstairs. Andre sat at the kitchen table with both hands around his mug, back straight. No phone in sight. The Sunday morning light came in through the window over the sink, pale and even, the kind of light that showed everything clearly. Brianna was still in her robe. Her hair was loose. She moved toward the coffee maker on automatic, humming something low under her breath. And it struck Andre, not for the first time, how completely at ease she was, how certain she was that the morning was just a morning. "Sit down with me," he said. Not a question. Not harsh, either. Just a sentence with a direction in it. She turned, mug in hand, and smiled at him. "Good morning to you, too." "Brianna." He looked at her steadily. "Sit down. No phones. I need to talk to you about the baby." Something moved across her face, too quick to name. She came to the table and sat across from him, cradling her mug with both hands. She looked at him with the particular expression of a woman bracing for a conversation she has already rehearsed. She was braced for the wrong one. Andre set his mug down. He folded his hands on the table. "I know about Cortez," he said. Silence. "I've known for several weeks," he continued. "I have documentation, a credit card statement from an account you opened separately, hotel charges, phone records connecting your contact listed as Toya W. to a number registered to Cortez Alston." He paused. "The affair has been going on for 14 months, Brianna. Not a moment of weakness. 14 months of decisions." She opened her mouth. "I'm not finished," he said. Quiet, firm. She closed it. "I've already filed a paternity challenge with the court. The conception timeline makes it factually impossible for that baby to be mine. We haven't been intimate in over 4 months. The filing requests court-ordered biological testing. That process is already moving." He watched her face. "You are not going to be able to stop it." Brianna's knuckles had gone pale around her mug. Her jaw was tight. "There's something else," Andre said. "Cortez submitted a zoning variance application for property adjacent to my company's warehouse district. That application contained detailed internal operations data, traffic analysis, logistics routing, that could only have come from inside my company. Information you had access to through 2 company dinners you attended as my wife." He let that land. "That application is now part of an active ethics inquiry." His financing is at risk. That paper trail does not lead back to me. It leads back to a routine security flag my company filed months ago. He paused. But we both know where the information came from. She shook her head slowly. Andre, there's one more thing, he said. She stopped. Cortez Alston has been in a long-term relationship for 3 years. A woman named Felicia. She has no idea you exist. Andre's voice stayed even. He was never going to leave her for you. He had no intention of it. You were not his plan. You were his arrangement. The color drained out of Brianna's face. It was the first real silence of the morning. Not the tense silence of someone waiting to respond, but the sick silence of someone hearing something they cannot talk their way around. She set her mug down. Her hand was unsteady. Andre. Her voice shifted. Softer now, reaching for something. We have history. 8 years. That means something. I made a mistake, and I know that, and I'm not proud of it, but we can work through this. There's a baby coming. Our family, it's not my baby, Brianna. You don't have to. We could. She leaned forward. We could raise her together. Forget the test. People do that. You know me. You know who I am inside all of this. That doesn't just disappear. Andre looked at her for a long moment. I do know who you are, he said. That's the problem. He reached down beside his chair and set a folder on the table. He opened it. He slid the divorce petition across the wood toward her. Slowly, deliberately, the way you set something down that has weight. She stared at it. You didn't make a mistake, Andre said. You made a decision. Several of them. Over 14 months. I'm just making mine. 3 knocks at the front door. Andre stood up from the table. He walked to the door without hurrying. When he opened it, Dwight Holloway was standing on the front step in a pressed button-down shirt, his hat in his hands. His face was composed in the particular way of a man who had spent the night deciding something and was now at peace with what he'd decided. Morning, son, Dwight said. Morning. Andre stepped aside. Come on in. Dwight walked into the house. He moved through the entryway and into the kitchen. He stopped when he saw his daughter. He looked at her face. He looked at the papers on the table. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I raised you better than this. Brianna's eyes filled. Daddy, I'm not here to argue with you, Dwight said. His voice was not cruel, but it did not bend. I'm just here to tell you I know. Andre stood near the doorway. Dwight turned and the 2 men moved together toward the living room, their footsteps steady and unhurried. Behind them, Brianna sat alone at the table, the divorce petition in front of her, her coffee going cold, the house completely quiet. 3 months is a long time when you're waiting. It is no time at all when you're watching. Andre sat in Naomi's office on a Tuesday afternoon in a leather chair that had held him through 4 separate consultations, a folder open across his knees, the city visible through the wide window behind her desk. The afternoon light was sharp and gold. It made everything look clean. Naomi sat across from him in her chair, reading glasses pushed up on her head, a legal pad on the desk between them. She moved through each item the way she moved through everything, in order, without rushing, without decoration. Paternity findings were certified by the court last Thursday, she said. Cortez Alston is the legally established biological father. Child support order is in effect. She turned a page. His attorney filed 2 separate motions attempting to delay the biological testing. Both were denied. The court does not have much patience for that kind of maneuvering when the timeline evidence is as clean as yours was. Andre nodded slowly. He had known the outcome was coming. Knowing didn't make the hearing of it feel like nothing. He sat with it for a moment, the image of Cortez in a courtroom, his tailored suit, and his easy confidence up against a document he could not charm his way out of. A number attached to his name every single month, on a schedule, for years. He fought it hard, Andre said. He did, Naomi said. Retained expensive counsel. filed every delay he could legally justify. She set the page down. It didn't matter. The biology was not negotiable. Andre looked at the window for a moment. Felicia. Public record, Naomi said simply. Paternity proceedings are filed in the public record. Her name was not in those documents, but his was. His name, Brianna's name, the child. She folded her hands. I don't know the specifics of how she found out. I know she did. Their relationship ended approximately 6 weeks ago. A brief pause. That had nothing to do with you. I know, Andre said. And he did. He had never reached for that outcome. He hadn't needed to. Cortez had spent 3 years building a life in 2 directions at once, and the only thing that had ever kept it standing was the assumption that no one would look closely enough to see the structure. Once the structure was visible, it collapsed on its own weight. That was not revenge. That was just physics. Naomi moved to the next item on her legal pad. The compliance review concluded 6 weeks ago, she said. The Ethics Board issued its findings. The zoning variance was denied. The findings cited the use of improperly sourced proprietary data in the application, specifically flagged the operations analysis section. She looked at him over the pad. His primary financing partner withdrew within 2 weeks of the finding, becoming public. The development timeline for the Warehouse District project is dead. His firm has since been restructured under his partner Marcus Webb's name. A brief, measured pause. Cortez Alston has been quietly removed from 3 regional professional associations in the last 60 days. Andre absorbed this without expression. He did not feel satisfaction exactly. It was something quieter than that. The feeling of watching a structure that was always going to fall, finally fall, and knowing that the only thing you had done was stop holding it up. Brianna's clients, he said. Naomi set the legal pad down. 2 of her larger accounts, the Meridian Group event contract and the Hargrove Foundation annual gala, have not renewed. Both organizations have professional relationships inside your network. No one made a phone call. No one needed to. She looked at him steadily. Reputation travels. Event coordination is a business built entirely on trust and relationships. Once the circumstances of your divorce became known in those circles, and they did become known, the math changed for people. That's not something you engineered. No, Andre agreed. Her business will recover, Naomi said. Eventually. She is talented at what she does, but she will be rebuilding from a smaller place than she expected to be at this point in her life. Andre thought about Dwight. He had spoken to him twice since the morning of the confrontation. Not long conversations, the kind men like Dwight had. Short, direct, carrying more than they said. Dwight was at his granddaughter's side without hesitation. That baby had done nothing wrong, and Dwight understood that with his whole chest. But when the subject of Brianna came up, the choices she had made, the man she had treated as predictable, disposable, Dwight's voice went flat in a particular way. Not cold, just settled. The way a man sounds when he has made his peace with a disappointment he knows is permanent. There was no recovering from that. Not for Brianna, not with her father. Andre already knew that. He had known it the morning Dwight walked through his front door with his hat in his hands, and his mind already made up. Naomi closed the folder. She looked at him across the desk. That's everything, she said. You're clear on all fronts, legally, professionally, financially. She held his gaze. It's done, Andre. He stood up from the chair. He straightened his jacket. He reached across the desk and shook her hand, a firm, unhurried grip. Thank you, Naomi, he said, for all of it. She nodded once. Go home. He walked out of her office, through the carpeted hallway, past the receptionist's desk, and through the glass front door into the afternoon. The sun was still sharp. The air had a little weight to it. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment with no particular urgency pulling him anywhere. He started walking toward his car. The moving truck arrived at 9 in the morning. Andre stood in the living room with his hands at his sides and watched two men in gray uniforms carry boxes through the front door. Brianna's boxes, labeled in her careful handwriting. Bedroom, closet, kitchen, mine, bathroom. She had been specific about what was hers. She had always been specific about what was hers. She directed the movers from the hallway, pointing and giving instructions in a voice that was measured, controlled, professional. The voice she used when she was working, when she needed to hold herself together in front of people she didn't know. Andre didn't help. He didn't interfere. He just stood there in the living room where they had shared 8 years of a life. And he watched the boxes move out of the house the way he watched everything, quietly, completely, without missing a single detail. At one point, Brianna passed through the room. She paused for just a moment, maybe 3 steps from him, and looked at his face, like she was searching for something. Grief, maybe, or anger. Something she could use to tell herself the story differently. He didn't give her anything. She picked up the last item from the shelf, a small glass bowl she'd bought at a street market years ago, and carried it out to the truck. An hour later, she was gone. Andre walked through the house alone. He moved slowly, room to room, not because he was lost, but because he was taking inventory of a different kind. Not the legal kind. Not the financial kind. The kitchen was still his kitchen. He had installed the under-cabinet lighting himself on a Saturday 3 summers ago, following a YouTube tutorial twice until he got it right. The tile in the hallway was the one he had spent 2 weekends laying by hand because the contractor's quote had been too high and he had the time and the patience and the will to do it himself. The back door, still stuck slightly at the bottom, had since the first winter, and he had always meant to fix it, and never had. And somehow, that particular unfixed thing felt more like his than almost anything else in the house. He stood in the bedroom for a long moment. The closet on her side was empty. The hangers were still there, pushed to one end, bare. He looked at them for a moment. Then he walked back downstairs. He was not empty. He had expected to feel empty, and he did not. What he felt was closer to the feeling after a long illness, not recovered yet, not fully, but the fever broken. The body remembering what it felt like to simply be a body, without the weight of something fighting inside it. The house was intact. Everything here had been built by his hands, paid for by his discipline, maintained by his patience. She had lived inside what he built. She had not built it, and she had not been able to take it. He went to the kitchen and made coffee. He washed the single mug when he was done. Patrice arrived at 6:30, with a foil pan of something that smelled like garlic and rosemary, and a paper bag with 2 bottles of sparkling water, because she had always maintained that real celebrations didn't require alcohol to mean something. She set the food on the counter, looked around the kitchen once, and said, "You cleaned." It needed it. She looked at him, not searching him the way Brianna had, just seeing him, the way Patrice had always seen him, clearly and without needing to be told what she was looking at. "You good?" she asked. "Getting there," he said. They ate at the kitchen table. They talked about her job, a case she was helping build, a paralegal she worked with who had been testing her patients for 3 months. They talked about their mother. Her birthday was coming up. They talked about nothing that required either of them to name the thing they were both sitting with. After dinner, they took their sparkling water out to the back porch. The evening was cool. The sky was dark blue going toward black, and the neighborhood was quiet in the way it got on weeknights. Distant voices, a dog somewhere, the low hum of a city that keeps moving regardless. They sat for a long time without talking. Eventually, Patrice said, "She really thought she had you figured out." "She did," Andre said. "That was the mistake." Patrice nodded. She looked out at the yard. "You're going to be all right, you know," she said. Not as a comfort. as a fact, the way Patrice stated facts. Andre looked out at the dark yard, at the fence he'd repaired 2 springs ago, at the concrete he'd poured for the patio, at the back door that still stuck a little at the bottom and always had. "I know," he said, 18 months later. "My mother used to say, 'Don't react, respond.' I spent 8 years of my marriage forgetting that. I spent 6 weeks remembering it." Brianna is raising her daughter, a little girl named Camille, born healthy, born innocent of everything, with minimal financial support from Cortez and the kind of real, complicated present support that only Dwight knows how to give. He is there every week. He loves that child with everything he has. His feelings about how she came to exist are his own business, and he manages them the way men like Dwight manage hard things, quietly, privately, without ever letting the child feel the weight of them. Cortez pays child support on the 1st of every month. He resents the number. He will resent it for years. His firm operates under Marcus Webb's name now. He attends fewer industry events than he used to. He is still charming at the ones he does attend. He has learned nothing, which means the next version of this story is already in progress somewhere, with someone else at the center of it. I was promoted to Vice President of Operations 7 months ago. I purchased an investment property in February, a duplex, both units cash flowing, titled in my name alone. I have someone in my life now, a woman I will describe only as someone who sees me, not the version of me that is useful or stable or predictable. Me. It is a quieter thing than I expected love to feel like the second time. I am learning that quiet is not the same as small. I still live in the house. The back door still sticks. I keep meaning to fix it. I probably won't. I don't have any regrets about how it ended. I have some about how long I waited to begin. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.